I would like to speak in this video regarding two topics: the future of protection in the nexus and the role of the global protection cluster and humanitarian protection in the humanitarian development peace security nexus as the first one. Humanitarian action is increasingly, as we know, connected to development, peace, and security work. But there are two main questions. What does this mean for the future of humanitarian protection and the role of the global protection cluster, and how humanitarian protection fits into the vision and concrete plans for humanitarian action in the coming decade? Humanitarian action has never been carried out in isolation from other sectors. Building on long-running initiatives such as linking relief, rehabilitation and development, and disaster risk reduction, and effort to strengthen connections with other sectors have accelerated over the past few years, especially following the 2016 World Humanitarian Summit, the United Nations and World Bank's new way of working. The European Union's joint humanitarian and development frameworks and other initiatives have in common a focus on the nexus between humanitarian work and development, as well as with peace and security to ensure that common objectives are reached. In these new models, connecting and aligning humanitarian action, development, peace, and security, the vision of the role for humanitarian protection is less clear. There may be an agreement that the overarching responsibility for protection is shared, but key practical questions remain, including who carries out the humanitarian protection work in practice in the nexus. How is the need for independence of certain protection work ensured in conflict-affected and politically sensitive contexts? Are we facing risks that we will create protection gaps? Who should be tasked with coordinating to ensure any such gaps are covered? These are some of the questions to focus on in order to help inform the discussions and provide a certain input on this topic strategy development wise. I would like to invoke the Global Protection Cluster Strategic Review as an example. The GPC is indeed developing a new strategic framework for the 2020-2024 period. Extensive consultations are continuing to take place with academics, AORs, community members, donors, experts, NGOs, and other clusters. The GPC is also trying to revitalize its structure to react better to the needs of the field and speak more forcefully for change around protection. The new GPC strategic framework is expected to reflect the evolution of the humanitarian response system highlighted by the work on the centrality of protection and the IASC protection policy and the need to adapt working methods to take account the changes to the United Nations coordination system announced by the Secretary General in 2018. Nexus discussions, climate response, and new approaches to solutions are included within this context of action. This will allow, of course, better insights on humanitarian assistance and protection, and carry out also consultations with stakeholders globally to help shape and refine the strategy. And it's very important to mention that it is an important topic in order to enhance diplomacy throughout the globe as well. Very interconnected topic, which is the second one of the video, regarding the Global Counterterrorism Forum, to mention the great endeavors of the Kingdom of Morocco and the Kingdom of the Netherlands, with also the contribution and the participation of the government of the United States within the context of the 10th GCTF Ministerial Plenary Meeting. This year's ministerial meeting focused on addressing the new challenges that have been subject to the extensive efforts of all GCTF members during these past years, since the creation in 2011. Expert meetings and workshops are also included. The 10 GCTF Ministerial Plenary Meeting therefore endorsed new framework documents that pertain to some of the most acute challenges emerging worldwide, namely the Glion Memorandum on the use of rule of law-based administrative and measures in counterterrorism context, addendum to the good practices on women and countering violent counterterrorism, the New York Memorandum on good practices for interdicting terrorist travel, the Berlin Memorandum on Good Practices for Countering Terrorist Use of Unnamed Aerial System. Working towards enhancing the impact of the GCTF's work, the ministerial meeting also provided the opportunity to have a forward look into the next year's priority and highlight future initiatives to be launched under its auspices. Finally, the ministerial meeting was also an opportunity to further emphasize on the GCTF's commitment to support and catalyze the implementation of the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy and the broader United Nations counterterrorism framework.